It's January 2nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the massive earthquake over in Japan. At least 4 people are dead after a 7.6 magnitude earthquake shook Japan's western coastline on the first day of the new year. A major tsunami warning was issued for the first time since the 2011 earthquake in northeastern Japan. With the start of the new year, South Korea has begun its 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, where Seoul is expected to be more vocal and proactive in handling North Korean issues. The Israeli military announced it would begin to pull out thousands of soldiers from Gaza ahead of a new phase in the war, which a senior U.S. official sees as a sign of Israel's gradual shifting to a lower intensity phase. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake rocked Japan's western coast at the start of the new year, prompting emergency responses from not only its authorities, but also from neighboring countries. 4 people are dead, with thousands left in shelters. Our Moon Hae-ryun starts us off.
As the dust begins to settle following a powerful earthquake that hit central Japan on Monday, authorities are surveying the damage. The 7.6 magnitude quake struck the Ishikawa prefecture at around 4:10 p.m. local time. And while lower than the 9.0 earthquake which devastated the country back in 2011, the U.S. Geological Survey said it is the biggest earthquake recorded in that region in more than 4 decades. The Japan Meteorological Agency initially issued a major tsunami warning, the first since the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, but later downgraded it to an advisory, as the quake triggered waves of just over a meter high along Japan's west coast as well as South Korea. Kyodo News Agency reported that 4 people have been confirmed dead as a result of the quake, and some 30,000 households in the region have experienced power cuts. Over 97,000 people across 9 prefectures in Japan are also said to have received orders to evacuate. With an unknown number of people still buried beneath the rubble and with no official figures regarding damage yet released, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has instructed search and rescue teams to do everything possible to save lives. Airlines have also faced disruptions, with Japan Airlines cancelling most services to the Ishikawa and Niigata regions. South Korea's Ministry of the Interior and Safety set up an emergency response team as waves of 67 centimeters were recorded along the eastern coast of Gangwon-do province. 6 cities in the region issued an emergency warning text message to residents, telling them to evacuate boats and get to high ground. So far, no casualties or damage have been reported in the country, but as waves could remain high due to aftershocks, people have been told to stay away from coastlines. U.S. President Joe Biden responded by promising any necessary assistance, calling Japan one of the country's close allies. With some 60 tremors being recorded following the initial quake, the JMA urged caution as there is a continued risk of earthquakes for the next 2 to 3 days. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Starting the new year, South Korea will begin work as a non-permanent UNSC member. Seoul is hopeful that the 2-year term will allow more room for the country to step up to manage North Korean issues. Our Kim Jung-sil reports.
South Korea's term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council has begun. The 2-year term was announced back in June when South Korea, along with 4 other nations, was elected to serve as a non-permanent member for 2024 and 2025. The UN Security Council has 5 permanent members, which are the US, China, Russia, the UK, and France, along with 10 non-permanent members. This is the 3rd time that South Korea is serving as a UNSC member following its terms in 1996 and 2013. The Security Council is the only UN body with the authority to issue binding resolutions to member states, so it's possible South Korea could raise its voice on North Korean nuclear and missile threats. It will be given the right to vote, submit draft resolutions, and summon meetings during the months that South Korea has the Security Council presidency. This year especially, South Korea will be working alongside the U.S., a permanent member, and Japan, which is already serving as a non-permanent member, so three-way cooperation on North Korean issues is expected.
We will do our best to help the Security Council effectively respond to major challenges, including not only North Korean issues, but also issues in Ukraine, as well as in Israel-Palestine, that threaten the peace and security of the international community.
But challenges remain. China and Russia, as permanent members of the Security Council, have been using their vetoes to block sanctions resolutions against Pyongyang. Experts say South Korea may need to first approach with trying to address North Korean human rights violations, as it may take some time to persuade China and Russia to change their views on North Korean nuclear issues. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol once again made assurances that South Korea will secure export-driven growth and recovery in 2024. Evolving threats from North Korea will also be dealt with in a tighter manner, he said. Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol pledged fresh efforts to sustain export-driven growth in 2024 and to complete a joint system with the US within 6 months to deter any nuclear or missile threat by North Korea. In his New Year's address on Monday, Yoon pledged to make the country's economic recovery sustainable and something that people can notice in their daily lives.
새해 2024년은 대한민국 재도약의 중대한 전환점이 될 것입니다. 무엇보다 글로벌 교역이 회복되면서 우리 경제 전반의 활력이 나아지고 수출 개선이 경기 회복과 성장을 주도할 것입니다.
However, the leader outlined the external global polycrisis such as stagflation and structural domestic factors that hinder sustainable growth. Pointing to the chronically low birth rate in particular, the lowest in the OECD at 0.72 children per woman as of 2023, Yoon called for fundamental solutions to tackle deep-rooted socio-economic challenges. To this end, the administration will continue its 3 major reforms, first in the labour sector, where it will encourage productivity, investment and job creation by removing illegal union practices and labour market inflexibility. Second, in education, where it will nurture innovation and global talents. And third, by increasing the fiscal soundness of national pensions. The president also pledged to spur the country's export-driven growth by ramping up tax incentives for innovative industries, continuing his economic diplomacy and strengthening supply chains in critical minerals.
대한민국은 상대의 선의에 의존하는 불종적 평화가 아닌 힘에 의한 진정하고 항구적인 평화를 확고히 구축해 나아가고 있습니다. 튼튼한 안보로 자유로운 경제활동과 걱정 없는 일상을 뒷받침하겠습니다.
Addressing Seoul's biggest security threat, Yoon said that any nuclear threat by North Korea will be fundamentally curbed with a stronger nuclear-based South Korea-US alliance, which will complete its extended deterrence system within the first half of 2024. His Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho said last month that the bilateral nuclear consultative group formed between the allies is expected to produce comprehensive guidelines by June on conducting nuclear responses to North Korea's provocations. The allies are also working to add nuclear response scenarios to joint military training this year, an unprecedented move in over 70 years of the alliance. The president said on Monday that the trilateral cooperation framework reached with his US and Japanese counterparts at Camp David last year will lead efforts for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, with Seoul playing a growing role in regional security, economy and culture as a global pivotal state. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said ahead of the new year that the Korean Peninsula is inching closer to the brink of armed conflict. Will 2024 be another rocky year here on the Korean Peninsula? Let's turn to Professor Im Jung this morning. Welcome, Professor Im, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Professor Im, President Yoon Suk-yeol, let's start with President Yoon Suk-yeol in his New Year's Day address, that by first half of this year, an enhanced South Korea-U.S. extended deterrence system will be completed to fundamentally deter any North Korean nuclear or missile threats. What does it mean by this?
Well, I think it was a pretty logical and natural response to the existing threat from the north. If we recall our memory, again, ever since the so-called Hanoi No Deal, again, the North Korea's provocations has been just, jumping up to the level which is pretty beyond, one specific country's just capacity. Again, the missile ranges have been diverse, and not only just nuclear and missile threat, they have conducted so many different types of cyber attacks, or human rights violation is pretty much serious too. So having had this very kind of complex threats from the north against South Korea, our government has been trying to strengthen our deterrence capacity vis-a-vis the north. Again, of course, together with the U.S., again, the Washington Declaration, which was a very critical decision between the two governments, which was, again, addressed in April when the President Yoon visited the United States. During his state visit, the Washington Declaration was addressed, which made the so-called NCG, Nuclear Consultative Group, possible. So having had this kind of, again, collective response to the North Korea's, that kind of, again, very complex threat, again, our government is trying to have a very, stable condition for the country's economy and the society. So again, I do think even though President Yoon, he didn't mention anything related to North Korea's provocation last year, but this year he mentioned it, and I think it is a logical flow from the provocations and then Washington Declaration and NCG and so on.
Definitely not a so surprising comment from President Yoon Suk in regards to handling Korean Peninsula situations. And Professor M, how do you think that the extended deterrence system will be strengthened further than it is now?
Again, as I mentioned, Washington Declaration was a very critical moment. It made it possible, even the trilateral cooperation between Korea, U.S., and Japan. Again, the Camp David, the summit, which was held in August last year, that was another like a history moment for the East Asian, not only just for the East Asian region and for probably the global context as well. So trilateral cooperation is also a very much defensive approach to the complex threats from the north. But not only just this trilateral cooperation, for example, NATO ambassadors, they visited Seoul at the end of the last year. So probably this year, I guess, not only just my government, even American government, even Japanese government, will be pretty much more interested in cooperative, collective action with another like-minded countries, like European countries or Australia, or who knows, probably Canada-like countries too, who again shares common concerns regarding the North Korean issues.
Definitely. And over the weekend, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un also called for perfecting his military's readiness posture. He said Korean Peninsula is, quote, inching closer to the brink of armed conflict. This is a pretty alarming sign, right, Professor M?
Well, it looks like Kim Jong-un is trying to go back to the Kim Il-sung's year. Again, of course, under our constitution, South Korean constitution, we also do think North Korean people also are our people. And we are, of course, ethnically speaking, we're one nation, should be, in theory. However, all this kind of as I mentioned, the threats from the North Korea is just beyond, again, our own just capacity. I'm not saying that, again, South Korea's military capacity is weaker than the North Korea. However, the situation is so much complex, which needs, again, the more collective action together with the like-minded countries. So, again, South Korea didn't give up our vision of, again, the unification. But at the same time, absolutely, we need to have very enough capacity to deter any threat, any provocation from the North. So we don't need to be too much, I think, threatened by Kim Jong-un's that words. However, at the same time, we need to be ready for anything.
Definitely. Professor, before I let you go briefly, some analysts are voicing concern that Kim Jong-un may be ramping up military provocations ahead of the U.S. elections this November. Now, because back in 2016, that's when North Korea staged its 2 nuclear tests, a 4th and 5th in January and September, respectively. Professor, what's your take on this?
Well, I cannot deny any possibility. Again, this year is pretty much, it will be very dramatic year. Again, very soon we will see the Taiwan presidential election result, and then Russian presidential election. And then in April, South Korea will have a general election for National Assembly. And probably in the fall, again, LDP, Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, the current ruling party, they might have their own party election for the party's leadership. And then November, as you mentioned, the American presidential election. So we have so many important elections this year, and election can be a kind of opportunity for North Korea-like regime, who is more like a free from this kind of, again, the free election. And they can use, again, these kind of political situations as their own opportunity. So that is why I keep emphasizing the collective cooperative action with the other partner countries.
All right, Professor Min-jung, thank you so much for joining us today. You have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
Israel says it will pull out thousands of troops from Gaza, with Washington interpreting the move as the beginning of a gradual transition to low-intensity operations. In the meantime, Hamas fired dozens of rockets into Israel on the New Year's Day, further raising tensions in the region. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Israeli military says it plans to pull thousands of troops out of the Gaza Strip. A statement released Monday said 5 brigades, or several thousand troops, were being taken out of Gaza for training and rest. Israel Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari did not say whether the pullback meant the armed conflict was entering a new phase. However, according to a U.S. official, Israel's decision to withdraw some of its troops from the Gaza Strip is a signal that it's beginning a gradual transition to low-intensity operations. The official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity, added that the decision to pull out troops is a reflection of the success Israel has had in its fight against Hamas. Meanwhile, the chief of the Israel Defense Forces Southern Command says the fight in Gaza will continue in a variety of methods, in a variety of intensities, and in varying forms. He says the shift in strategy will make it difficult for the enemy to pinpoint them and understand them. At the stroke of midnight marking New Year's Day, Hamas fired at least 27 rockets at the south and center of Israel. According to Israel's military, its air defense system intercepted 18 rockets, while 9 of them fell in open areas. In a video published on social media, Hamas claimed responsibility for the attack from Gaza, saying it had fired M90 rockets in response to the massacres of civilians carried out by Israel. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
An explosion at a liquefied petroleum gas charging station in Pyeongchang, Gangwon province on Monday has left 5 people seriously injured. According to the Gangwon Special Self-Governing Fire Department on Tuesday, A fire broke out after an explosion at the LPG charging station at 8:41 p.m. Monday and was extinguished in about 3 hours. Authorities deployed 117 personnel to extinguish the large fire at the explosion site. The explosion also damaged buildings and vehicles. Police and fire authorities are working to confirm the exact extent of damage and investigate the exact cause of the explosion.
Good morning and a Happy New Year. I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen, in a New Year's Day speech on Monday, called for peaceful coexistence with China. However, China's Xi Jinping said that reunification with Taiwan is a historical inevitability. With only 11 days until Taiwan's presidential election, Tsai Ing-wen's last New Year's Day speech in her 8 years as president said Taiwan's only choice is to uphold democracy and protect peace, and that it wishes to have peaceful, democratic dialogue for long-term stability between China and Taiwan. China's Xi Jinping, though, struck a strong tone in his New Year's Eve address, speaking of Taiwan as being part of the same family as China and claiming that the two countries will surely be reunified. Now to Ukraine, where the cities of Lviv and Odessa were targeted by Russian drone attacks on New Year's Day. According to reports, a record 90 Shahed-type drones were launched. Ukrainian officials say that 87 drones were intercepted. However, a 15-year-old boy was killed and several people are injured by falling debris in Odessa. The attacks will also cause significant damage to a museum and university buildings in Lviv, which the city's mayor described as symbolic and cynical. Monday's attacks comes as Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to intensify attacks on Ukraine following a Ukrainian strike on the South Russian city of Belgorod, which killed at least 20. Now, Europe's longest-serving monarch, Queen Margrethe II of Denmark, announced Sunday that she will abdicate on January 14th, bringing an end to exactly 52 years on the throne. She will be succeeded by her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik. The 83-year-old Queen made a surprise announcement during her customary New Year's Eve speech, saying that she had time to reflect and come to the decision following back surgery last February. Queen Margrethe became the longest-serving monarch in Europe after the death of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, and is also the longest-sitting monarch in Denmark's history. The United Arab Emirates broke 2 Guinness World Records on Monday with its New Year's Eve show. The show in Ras Al Khaimah welcomed the new year with an 8-minute-long firework and drone display. Its drone display, featuring more than 1,000 drones, set a record for the longest straight-line drone display, and its firework display broke the record for the longest chain of aquatic floating fireworks.
Good morning. We would rather have had sunshine with colder temperatures over the New Year's holiday weekend. It was cloudy all through the weekend with warmer temperatures. Starting off the first workday of the new year on a cloudier note again, with west of Gangwon-do, east of Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheong-do provinces seeing light snow flurries today. It will continue to be milder than what it should be around this time for most of this week. Morning temperatures are already 7 to 8 degrees higher than averages. Then afternoon highs will be 1 to 3 degrees higher than norms, with Seoul topping out at 5 degrees, Busan at 11 degrees this afternoon. There will be a mix of rain and snow tomorrow at dawn in southern provinces. Then central regions will receive that precipitation in the afternoon. There will be a brief cold snap on Thursday with an expected low of -4 degrees here in Seoul, but can't complain much about the chill, knowing we are getting close to midwinter. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.